All right, welcome back, guys. So this is going to be a real quick update video on this surfboard here, a 3D printed surfboard. I posted a video about this about maybe 2 months ago or so. At that time, I hadn't had a chance to take this board out for a surf yet due to COVID-19, and the beaches were closed. And it was really cold. Since then, it's still really cold. But I have had the board out for a surf a couple times, so I'm gonna talk about my experience. That's what this video is gonna be about. It's a follow-up video. So I'm gonna go really quickly over how I got this 3D printed surfboard into a surfable state, because where I left off in the previous video, which if you haven't checked out, I highly recommend you go check that one out because it's a little bit more interesting than this one, because I went through the design process of how I designed the board and then 3D printed it out and then assembled it. But to get it into a surfable state, you can't just take a 3D printed surfboard and go surf it. It does need to be glass, just like a traditional surfboard. First thing is you need to laminate the board with fiberglass. So I laminated this board with 6-ounce fiberglass, and what that means is it's 6 ounce per square yard is the weight of the fiberglass, and that denotes the strength of the fiberglass. And it's very, 6 ounces is probably the most commonly used. So the bottom was laminated with 6-ounce fiberglass cloth with epoxy as the resin. I didn't use polyester resin, I used epoxy. And then on the deck, where your feet land on the deck of the board, it takes the most amount of punishment. So I did an inlay here, a patch to make that extra strong. Then I cut out a patch of glass and went just on the top of the board, and then I did another layer of 6-ounce cloth and wrapped on top of those 2 layers, giving a really strong rail and a really strong deck, because the way this board was printed at 0.75 of a millimeter, so 3/4 of a millimeter thick for the skin of each piece of the 3D printed surfboard, they're very flimsy. So where I'm getting the strength is from the glass and the epoxy. Due to the thickness of the skin and the way I designed and printed off the board, the orientation causes these little divots everywhere where you can see little pools of epoxy have pooled a little bit, so it's a little cloudy because of some trapped air bubbles in the epoxy. That's not as big of an issue when you have a board or a color that isn't as bright or as dark as this red. So it really magnifies and it shows up all of those little imperfections or the air bubbles in the epoxy, because the thicker the amount of epoxy that you have, the more you'll see those layers. And on top of something that is a dark color, it really accentuates or shows those air bubbles. If you were trying to avoid that, print the board in a lighter color, should any of you guys actually decide to try to do this. So after laminating the board with fiberglass and epoxy resin, then it's time to make it nice and smooth, and you do that by sanding, profiling in all of the laps of the fiberglass, and then giving this what's called a hot coat, where you put another layer of epoxy and you brush it on to the surface of the surfboard. You do it to both sides. And that gives you a smoothness to the board. Now I did 2 coats just for added strength. Typically the 3rd coat is a gloss coat and you can polish that. I didn't bother to do that. I just wanted to leave this board as strong as possible, and also if I was trying to sand this like a regular surfboard, like my collection or my quiver back here, what happens is you have a chance, because of all these little divots, to sand through on the high spots. So, but I didn't do that. I just glassed it, hot coated it, gloss coated it, and it's in a surfable state. Oh, I should mention that before I did the hot coat, I did laminate on some 3D printed surfboard fins as well. And then I did the hot coat and gloss coat. So, and then that's what you have where you see right here. And weight-wise, it's really good. It's just under 14 pounds. Now, to talk about riding this board, the shape of this board, it is a little bit small for my weight and combination of my wetsuit, because I do need to wear a very thick wetsuit. So for those of you guys who surf in warm water, you guys don't realize how lucky you have it. Now, because just for an example, this is a mitt that I sometimes wear, and this is 5 millimeters. And I also have a pair of gloves as well. The last time I had this out for a surf, the water temperature, I want to say, was 4 degrees Celsius. So it's still really cold. My feet and my fingertips were numb. Because my wetsuit is so heavy because I surf in a 5'4", it's really heavy with a hood and the gloves and the booties, and also it's like paddling with 2 elastic bands on your arms. When you have a wetsuit that thick and you're trying to paddle, it is just cumbersome and not very comfortable. And also I'm a little bit out of shape because I haven't surfed over the winter. So riding a board this small does have some challenges. Now I did get up and I was able to ride this a little bit, but the waves weren't that powerful. So if you guys decide to print this exact board that I've shared the files on Thingiverse, this board is really meant probably for more powerful waves just because of the size of the board and the volume of the board. But from the few times that I actually did get this out and I was able to surf it a little bit in the gutless surf I was in, you could totally ride this, no problem. Like, this is a very viable option for making a surfboard. It's probably not the best option, but what I'm saying is that it's possible. This is a proof of concept and it seems to work, and I might try this again, maybe with a board that has a little bit more volume. I have some ideas on how to maybe improve upon it so it doesn't have these little divots, and to make it perfectly smooth and make it actually look like a really professionally made surfboard. Now, the durability of this board, I do have 2 spots here where I have slight delamination right where my heel front foot hits the deck of the board. Overall though, having this out a handful of times, it's holding up. Paddling, it paddles fine. Yeah, it surfs very similar to a shorter type of board because it is a little heavier than what a normal shortboard would be. Also, I'll try to get some more footage and maybe post that in the future. And I'm trying out a new GoPro mount. I'm trying out the Pro Standard, so it's a mouth mount, which is kind of cool. So I'll be able to maybe just film going forward, and that might be kind of neat. So some lessons learned. This is totally a viable option for making a surfboard. I didn't think it would be, but my proof of concept, it totally will work. A few things to maybe watch out for or to solve in the next iteration, which I may try this again. I'd like to, maybe to make something with a little more volume. But my idea is to increase the thickness of the skin of the board so I don't get these little divots, so I can get a perfectly smooth board. So if you're gonna try this based on my files, I recommend going a little thicker. It will increase the weight a little bit, but I think it's worth it to get it to look really smooth and professional. The other thing is I could change the orientation of how I printed out these pieces. I would probably maybe do more like I would slice it up so that there's more like a stringer going through it, and the pieces are more lengthwise as opposed to just triangular blocks. I don't know, I might have to examine that a bit in Mesh Mixer, which is the software that I use to slice this apart. Again, that's in the first video. Or I might completely redesign this in another program besides using Mesh Mixer to cut it apart and designing it in the AKU Shaper software program, CAD program for making surfboards. So next iteration, probably make it a bit thicker, a little bit more volume. I could probably make it a little shorter and a little bit fatter and thicker, and I think it would be a board that wouldn't take too long to print, and it would totally be rideable. Also, I don't know if I would use PLA next time. I might use PETG, and if I could get it in like a satin finish to help with the adhesion of the epoxy, the lamination to the PLA, because PLA is inherently, once you finish printing it, is very slippery. That's why I got a little bit of delamination, which is what I was worried about. But after my testing, I think this totally holds up. If you look at the bottom, it's holding up just fine. Yeah, the rails, me grabbing onto it and stuff, I'm just very, very surprised at how well this is holding up after having this out a few times. After I'm done yammering on here, at the end of this video, I'm going to append on the footage, the extended footage of glassing, hot coating, and just getting this board ready to be surfed for any of you guys who are interested in that, because I realize not everyone watching this video is technically interested in building surfboards. You guys just might have found this was just a neat video about making a 3D printed object that can be surfed. So yeah, I'm gonna end the video here. Stick around if you want to check out that extended video. Thanks so much for checking out my channel, this video. I make all kinds of different videos, mainly surfboard videos for the next little while, but I do have some other projects on the go and I'll be posting those as well. So subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Right here we have an example of why the board needs to be vented. The vent right now is sealed shut. The board is sealed airtight, and now because the air inside of this void, this hollow chamber, is expanding, I'm getting this delamination here. So I'm gonna have to pop that open. I'm gonna open up the vent back here so that way this whole board can breathe. All right, now that I vented it, the board seems okay. came out fairly clear. It's a little lumpy still, but overall it's pretty good.